Good morning, everyone. We're going to start now. Thank you for taking some time out of your day to take part in this youth dialogue on the new social compact in South Africa. So just to give some background on what we'll be talking about. So back in 2019, Back in 2019, South Africa took part in a voluntary national report and recognized that despite the progress we've made since 1994, we are still one of the most unequal societies globally. We need to, and this needs to change. We have one of the best constitutions in the world. Honestly, we have a first world constitution in a third world country, and it is our job to change that, especially as the future generations. And all of this has been made so much worse due to COVID-19. So today our guests will be Dr. Janet Munakamwe and Ms. Fundisike Nzimande, who are leading experts in the creation of this new social compact. Our first speaker will be Ms. Fundisike. Would you please, Ms. Fundisike, are you still in the call? And you can take us away by explaining what the new social compact is and everything.
Registration and then we okay. We're prepared for the meeting.
Hi, Amira. I just received Fundi. She's trying to help Dr. Janet to join. I think there is a problem in joining. Let me ask, colleague, did you face a problem to join the meeting?
Ms. Fundi, are you ready?
Hi, Amira, can you hear me? Hi, Amira.
To engage with the actual civil society, to measure what is needed to kickstart the social compact that was originally negotiated 28 years ago into more of a present day terms, seeing what relationships need to develop between the society and the state government. We will be working with several provinces around South Africa to conduct questionnaires and interviews in order to have that both one-on-one, but then representative sampling, hopefully, of and that is how we are engaging with the new social compact at the moment. So we have prepared some discussion questions, but since we are still waiting on a couple of people, in the meantime, maybe we could just begin with one of the others. Do you understand what the social compact is? But then also, what influence would you like it to serve as a voice of the youth in a newly developed compact? Hi, everyone. I did put the question into the chat if you wanted to visualize it a little bit and reflect on the question a bit. So just feel free to jump in whenever you'd like.
Hey, everybody. Is there anything you guys would like to discuss about the new social compact? Any questions you have, please pop them into the chat or ask. This is a dialogue based on youth participation. We'd love you guys to get involved, to participate. Any questions about the reading material Joseph sent over, please let us know and we'll do our best to answer you.
Morning. 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 Can you hear me?
Good morning. Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, Amira and the rest of the colleagues. This is Pastor Lebo from Northern Cape. I can see that others are still struggling But what I can suggest is that can't we start from the scratch now of just giving our youth a broader background, meaning of what is social contract, because most of them, they don't understand. This is new to them. I think afterwards, then now, and engage further on that, that's when now we can move forward. Can you kindly do that for us so that now every youth participant here on this platform must never be left behind? Because actually, it is their platform. We are just here to come and support them. Can you do that, my dear beloved?
Pastor Lebo, could you please repeat that? It was a little crackly and I didn't get the full thing of what you were saying. Could you please repeat that for me?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, this is much better.
It's much better, ne? What I'm requesting is that now, can't you start from the scratch and just give the background overview and the meaning of what is social contract, especially to this participant, the youth participant, because we are just here to support them. And this is very important for the youth to understand all of these big words, the social contract, social compact, what does it mean? Before we can go any further, I see that now others are struggling to go in. So can you please, before we can move forward, just let's start first by explaining briefly what is social compact, so that our youth can be on par with this whole topic and fully participate. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor Lebo. Let me pull. Joseph did send out documents to everybody yesterday for them to read, and that kind of explains everything about that. But let me pull that up to see.
He did send through the document with all important information. Remember, this is something new for these children, for the youth. So even if it is sent on the emails, they need to fully understand it. Hence, I would prefer that one of the speakers just to explain briefly of what it's all about, so that these children must not be left behind. It is important for them to participate. After all, this is their platform.
I understand, Pastor Lebo. So that's what I said. Everybody was read through kind of the documents that you just said. They need to ask me questions so that I can kind of see where they are struggling, so that I can help them from that point of view. There's no use in me explaining everything and they're still not understanding. Rather, they need, please ask me questions and we will answer you from there. So what you don't understand, what you do understand. Ask questions. That's what makes us a dialogue. It's an open communication between everyone.
Good morning, good morning, good morning.
Good morning, Ms. Fundi. Are you ready to start explaining to our youth volunteers about the social compact?
Yes, ma'am, I'm ready. Yes,
Thank you. Thank you
I'm
so much.
sorry. I'm so sorry. I stepped out to just quickly grab a snack from my mom. I'm here at the COSATU Gender Conference. So I had to bring my mom with because she's one of my caregiving responsibilities. And hence I had to travel with her to this venue. Yes.
That is okay. We are very glad that you are with us now. So you can take it away. Explain to us about everything to do with the social compact and how our youth can get involved.
Okay. Thank you so much for this platform that you have given us. Our task, according to the job that we've been given by African Monitor, is to ensure that we are, as civil society, preparing our own inputs in terms of what is our vision of the social compact. We are then facilitating in a way, hopefully working with civil society organizations, civil society, NPOs, trade unions, women, LGBTQIA, youth. There's kinds of people that we normally do not have a very good chance to engage in national discussions. So we are really working on this aspect to ensure that the usually marginalized subgroups within our communities actually get their voice in terms of what is our expectation of government, what is our expectation of the kinds of things that we would like the state or the government to deliver to our particular subgroups. And I think I really would like to say thank you to the African Monitor, which is the Secretariat for Civil Society, for organizing this kind of a process for people like yourselves, young people, to engage with this particular issue. Perhaps before we go into the actual issues, I think I will just perhaps explain why you need, as young people, to have an understanding, even if it's just a basic understanding of the kinds of policies that sort of underlie many of the interventions of government. Why is it important for you to have a basic understanding of these kinds of policies? Yeah, it's actually quite critical because as young people, you need to engage and to make your inputs in different platforms that government sort of makes available to consult with society, with civil society. Sometimes they only consulting with business, sometimes they're only consulting with unions, sometimes they're only consulting with faith-based organizations and so on and so on. But when we are talking about the social contract, the consultation or the views that must reach government are the views of all the different subgroups of our society, of all the races, of all the genders of our society. Basically, when we are talking about a social contract, no one must be left behind. So, and this is why you yourselves have to have a little bit of an understanding of what these policies are. And I think in our context, in South Africa, we need to also have an understanding a little bit about the history, because I think many of the challenges that we are still experiencing are coming from the history that we've got, the history of apartheid. I hope you can all see my head. So I think I will then go into the issues that you probably have to have before we start engaging with the questions themselves. So from a civil society perspective, and maybe even more specifically from a youth perspective, you need to understand that during apartheid, when we had white domination, when we had internal colonialism in South Africa, we had a social compact which was looking at providing services, providing social and public benefits only to white people. When it came to the Black majority including Indian, colored, so-called colored, and Africans, those people were outside of the social contract. And this is how the apartheid system worked. And I think you really have to understand that aspect, because what we are struggling with now is actually moving from a system that was cemented on division, a system that was cemented on discrimination, a system that was cemented on marginalization and exclusion of a swath, a majority of the people in the country. So to actually move from that kind of a system to make a reality of the vision of a unitary state, one state that services all of the population equally, became quite a mammoth task. And the first policy that the post-94 or the post-democracy government emerged with, and I'm going to just look at the economic policies, because basically it is difficult to even make the social policies a reality when the sort of the basis or the foundation, which is economic policy, is very, very difficult to actually get right. So the first policy that emerged, which was sort of a socio-economic policy, was the Reconstruction and Development Policy. That particular policy was based on quite lengthy consultations with communities in South Africa. And it's, I would say, plus minus 2 years. It was taken in consulting to come up with the Reconstruction and Development Plan. So it was based on the people. It was the first policy that was linking reconstruction and development in our country. And it was a really grand policy. You know, when you go into various aspects of it, if I can just make an example, with a housing and infrastructure, there was a clear vision of ensuring that even housing, even human settlements are properly integrated within the economy, linked up properly with infrastructure like energy infrastructure, like ICT infrastructure. The vision of the Reconstruction and Development Plan was that, for example, a home in the post-democratic South Africa was going not just to have a bathroom and a toilet in the house and clean running water, but that it would have, you know, electricity, and it would also have ICT, meaning when you move into your house, it will already have the Wi-Fi functionality. That was the vision. But this did not happen according to the vision of the developers, the concept makers for the reconstruction and development plan. And from that reconstruction and development plan, RDP, you know, the houses that we see now, which are called RDP houses, they are so far from the vision of the RDP. They don't even come close to the vision of the RDP. Welcome, Dr. Janet. I hope you will be able to connect with what we are doing now. I am very happy to see you. And then after the policy of reconstruction and development plan, we then moved quite suddenly and without much consultation to what was called the growth, employment, and reconstruction policy. That particular policy was the most unpopular policy of the post-democratic period. And I can even say that particular policy sort of militated against the whole idea of a social contract where all the citizens of South Africa would benefit from the activities, the programs, the projects, the plans of government. What happened with GEA, as it was called, growth, employment, and redistribution? What actually happened is that that particular policy was developed by academics working with international foundations, you know, of big business to come up with this policy, this economic policy. And it was emphasizing on reducing public spending. So the state was accused of being too bloated, too big, and therefore it had to be controlled and limited and reined in, which would then account for less spending. Remember, we are coming, that was in 1995, 96. In fact, in 96, when this policy was declared policy of government, without any consultation with anybody, the policy was just adopted by government. So it created a lot of enmity and animosity in the country, a lot of disagreement and mistrust of government. And it was militating against the social contract that everyone had an expectation of in the South African context. The other thing, it was limiting taxation to only 25% of taxation, specifically for business, to 25% of the gross domestic product. And of course, the expectation from all those numbers of people who had been struggling against apartheid, struggling for a democratic country, the expectation was that we were going to expand education. Access to education was going to be expanded. Access to health facilities and infrastructure was going to be expanded. And when we say expand education, we're expanding primary basic education. We're also expanding intermediate education. We're also expanding higher education, because under apartheid, it was even more constrained, you know. The majority, which is Black people, including Indians, Coloreds, and Africans, those people were really constrained in terms of ability to access higher education. And I think I may add here to say, for nations to develop, it becomes critical that at least 10% of the population has access to higher education. And that's 10% then becomes the impetus for a nation to develop. So it becomes important that people can not just access education at a basic level, but that they can also access education at a higher education level, because this is where we now are able to emerge with innovation and also accelerated engagement within the economy. So this is what was the expectation from all those millions of South Africans who had been part of the struggle for democracy. And this policy, it's really stayed from 1996 until the first part of the 21st century. And the mood in the country was really very sour because of Gia. So because of that, there was now a necessity and a pressure for the ANC government to come up with something else that would in a way sort of push Gia aside. And that was the accelerated and shared growth initiative of South Africa. In short, it was called ASGISA. That particular policy also was well discussed with different sectors of civil society. Business was consulted, trade unions were consulted, other organs of civil society were consulted. And ASGISA was also looking at this big question that the rest of the policies have been trying to deal with. The big question in South Africa is, how do we deal with the structure of the economy? Because the apartheid structure, the apartheid economic structure was about excluding the majority and only promoting the minority, meaning only white people can benefit. But moving from that has been the biggest challenge in South Africa. So ASGISA is also was attempting to deal with the structure of the economy, to make the economy more open to new entrants from the Black majority to play meaningful roles in the economy, like establish businesses, like extend and increase what we call the real economy, there where we produce, where we manufacture, where we innovate, and I think if we would have been able to deal with the structure of the economy, perhaps we would be even in a position now in South Africa to develop a South Africa 100% South African made a motor vehicle. Just an example of how changing the structure of the economy could perhaps impact on the South African economy and the South African products. And of course, increase employment opportunities and ensure that we don't talk about youth unemployment, because with every successive administration that has been around since Mandela, the whole thing about youth employment has been an issue, and everyone is really concerned about it, because we can see what happens when youth is not gainfully or meaningfully employed. We get other social problems that are difficult to deal with. But ASGISA, again, although it was such a great sort of idea, concept, it also did not stay around for a long time. But the mood at that time, after ASGISA had been introduced, the economic mood in the country was very buoyant. It was very positive because I think as a result of GEAR, there had been a little bit of a foreign direct investment that was attracted by the policy of GEAR. And then when ASGISA came around, you know, everyone was happy about the expansion of the economy. And during apartheid, it's important to note that the economy was growing at only 1%, and it had been doing that for about 10 years, growing by 1% annually. But as soon as the ANC came into power, the economy grew by 3%. And I think around 2004, the economy was growing by 4%. And there was every expectation to see the economy growing by a higher percentage at the time. And then before ASGISA had been around for enough time, and I guess because you know, of all these discussions, again, people in South Africa, we don't give enough time for policies to work and yield results. There's always this you know, rush to move on to the next one. So
Excuse me, Ms. Fundi.
yes, ma'am.
Can you wrap up in about 3 minutes?
Yes, I can. Then
Thank
we came up with the national growth, the national growth path, which was also building on ASGISA, still attempting to deal with the structure of the economy. And even before, by that time, President Zuma was coming up, stepping into the position of leadership, and the NGP was quickly replaced by the National Development Plan. Again, the National Development Plan, we are told that it was building on the national growth path, but there were concerns because the National Planning Commission was saying that they were not yet ready to put the National Development Plan, to put it up for adoption, but it was adopted quickly in different forums, you know, the ANC conference in Mangaung adopted the National Development Plan, Parliament adopted the National Development, the DA, the business community, they adopted the National Development Plan. But people, you know, within the so-called civil society, the trade unions, they were not happy with the National Development Plan. So this is what we have now, the National Development Plan, which is sort of our basis for all the things we want to do, and which is the basis for us to sort of check if our social compact or our social contract is on course. Is it going according to what we expect it to be? We also have, as part now, not necessarily the economic policy, but we've got ideas about how to govern the country. They contribute positively to the social compact. There we've got the Constitution, especially Chapter 2 of the Constitution. Chapter 1 and Chapter 2 of the Constitution is saying all the good stuff that we want to hear about our rights, our protections as a civil society, as citizens in South Africa. We also have the idea in the Constitution, it's built into the Constitution, the idea of participatory governance and participatory democracy. And these are ideas that are in the Constitution, but we all know that when we look at our lived experience, there are things that we can see that our government does want us to discuss and talk about, therefore it becomes participatory. But there are other things that when we want to talk about them, the government is not as willing to come to the party or to give us a forum to discuss those particular things. So basically, in short, these are the policies that we have had and that we have now. The National Development Plan is in place. It is underlying most of the interventions that we are doing in the economy and even socially and even politically in our country. And then I will stop there and ask Dr. Monakamwe to make additions to what I've just input. Thank you very much.
Okay, brilliant.
Janet?
Thank you so much. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes. Could we just give Keegan a few minutes to make a comment before he has to leave? And then we'll get on to your discussion.
All right, no problem.
Thank you so much. Keegan, the floor is yours.
Hi, thank you very much. I'm sorry to be going so early. Like the engagement was, of course, supposed to be till 11:30, but I think, of course, due to technical difficulties, there was some hold up. But I, of course, appreciate to be in this space, and thank you so much for the opportunity. So my take on it is, and this is something that I have been engaging on for some time now, regarding youth affairs and where young people are placed when you speak about things like a social compact, policy development, as well as just what the input of young people are when it comes to these channels. So I definitely agree with the former speaker when she spoke about the consideration if you look at apartheid, and I specifically want us to look at apartheid spatial planning as well as the preconditions set of the old regime. So when we look at all these factors, and there's a joke in one of the spaces that I always occupy, we say that a lot of the youth affairs is a copy and paste mechanism. And we see it because there's no real interjection. Later on today, I will also sit on, I guess, a webinar that speaks about the Integrated Youth Development Plan. And the problem is all these legislative policy instruments is a copy and paste ultimately of old relic and archaic documentation that is outdated and not moving with the current time. So why am I referencing apartheid spatial planning? We had 28 years to redirect these spatial problems that South Africa is ultimately exposed to, that was part of the old regime. And yet we are still struggling, again, as the former speaker said, basically to implement the new policy. South Africa has a wealth of policy that can be functional. The problem comes with implementation, but I also believe to large in part that the problem exonerates menial youth input. And that's a problem. On an earlier African Union, apologies, document, they said that young people are now being recognized. And I find that problematic, or sorry, young people are now being considered to be catalysts and enablers of change. I find that problematic because by recognizing young people, you still allow young people or youth, you give them the option to be part of this. And that in no sense mandates and prioritizes their needs. So when we really look at all these old policies, all these documents that we basically copy and pasting, I am definitely in favor that South Africa and ultimately the continent, I'm Pan-Africanist, is in need of young, thought-provoking people that can influence all these archaic documents, all these, all these old way of thinking that will ultimately give us something influential, something powerful, something that moves with the time. And that is why I definitely support a reenactment of, or the redevelopment of, a proper social compact. Even the National Youth Development Policy, even the National Youth Development Agency, all these institutions are just tick box exercises that ultimately has no real life effect on the pleas of young people. So while the pleas of young people and the future of this country. So that's my 2 cents. And again, thank you very much for allowing me into the space and giving my input. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Keegan. I fully agree with you with everything that you said. Have a great engagement, and we will engage at our next event. Thank you.
Thank you, Amira. Bye, everyone.
Dr. Janet, you now have the floor.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. A big thanks to the African Monitor team for organizing this very important. I'm so sorry I'm at a guest house. Sorry, I'm sitting next to the kitchen, to the dining. Sorry, that's the only place where I could sit in order to speak to you guys. I'm so sorry about the noise, the background noise. So basically, the issue here is there's nothing very new about a social compact, the notion of a social compact. I would like to first of all thank my colleague, Comrade Fundi, for a great job. I think she managed to summarize very technical policies in a short space of time, and also that stimulated the very interesting input from Keegan. Thank you so much, Keegan. But just to quickly respond to you, is he there, or he has already left? He has actually unpacked some of the issues, aspects that I really wanted to touch on, to say this idea of a social compact is not something new, which is why we had to undergo this particular rigorous, robust policy review. I mean, me and Comrade Fundi, so that we try and understand as to what has been copied and pasted. I like it, Keegan. Thank you so much for saying it as it is. Yeah, so we can actually find that it's just a repetition of issues, and just to delay that particular sincere transformative aspect that should bring development to the country and obviously to the citizens. So for me, I think also I liked it where Keegan challenged the youth aspect component of it, where there's that, that rhetoric, that is packaged in a way that we embrace the youth. They're supposed to be the catalyst, but in practice, youth do not even participate in the decision making of the policy development process that takes place. But we are glad that at least today we are meeting, and I hope that the youth will also take active participation when the consultations begin to take place in various provinces and in various spaces, because only when you participate is when your voice could be heard. If we don't do this, the future, the current lives that we are living, and the future is in our hands. The youth that I'm speaking to today, till now, we are now at another level. We are part of another, generation. But now, if we don't really show the way, demonstrate how policy itself is made, it will be very difficult when we leave for the young generations to say, okay, so how are we gonna perhaps come up with social compact as per the aspirations of the people? You are the future leaders. You are the current and future leaders. So this is why this session, I found it very, very tempting and important. And why did we have to ask to give you this particular resources in advance? It's for you now to get down in your own space, sit down, try and now go through those particular policies that Comrade Fundi has managed to share with you. Of course, we had to just do some overview, not everything in detail. Try and understand, okay, if this policy existed, why is it that today we have, poverty has escalated, huge inequalities, we have high unemployment among the youth, and yet we have one of the most held constitution, because in this particular world, the national constitution, which is held for all its precincts and all the other ideals that it carries. And the socioeconomic aspects are actually deeply entrenched in our national constitution. So the key question now is, what is it that this notion, the new notion, as pronounced by the president in 2019 at the SONA 2019 and the recently SONA 2022, how is it so different from all these social compacts? Because the notion of a social compact has been in existence since during apartheid, although during apartheid, I'm sure Comrade Fundi could have touched on that as I was struggling to join. During apartheid, it was just skewed among the white population because those are the ones that were actually regarded as citizens. So all these other, if you were of another color, obviously you wouldn't be part of that compact. One other aspect is that you need to understand what a compact is and how does it have to bring different players, different multi-stakeholders on the ground. So in that sense, it simply meant that Black people were not part of the compact simply because they were not a recognized party or multi-stakeholders, part of those multi-stakeholders that are critical. So the question for me is that how should the new social compact that the president, remember he said new, which means there's something that has been existing before, or I don't know new in what ways, how new is a new social compact? How does it look like? That is in the context of how it's in the socioeconomic policies are impacting on us as the young ones today. So you have to decide, how should it look like? Should it look like the RDP? Should it look like the old? Should it look like the NDP? What is it that is different from the current social compact that is in the form of the NDP policy? You know, because we need to be very, very careful about packaging of, you know, certain particular policies from a political perspective. There is nothing new about the social compact, but now we need to redefine the ones that are existing. Okay, so that we can actually say this is the social compact that we want as the youth, taking into account the three major inequalities that have been crippling the country even up to today and worsened by the COVID-19. That is the unemployment, high unemployment, poverty levels have escalated, and inequalities. And of course, we have other discriminatory aspects, or, you know, within or some inequalities when it comes to gender dynamics, where women still bear much of the, you know, burden around the inequalities as we speak to issues of poverty, unemployment, you know, unpaid care work, and all those kind of things. So what is it exactly that we want? And the issue around the emerging issues around the climate change, on its own, it's going to have a lot of, you know, ramifications in as far as we talk about a social contract in the absence of, you know, taking into account certain particular, you know, unfolding phenomenon. Like you might have a good budget to say, now we are all covered, we can have RDP houses, but now we have noted what happened in KZN. So all those are some of the key questions that I would just want to leave with you. What is it? What is the social compact that we would want to see as the youth? Begin to think about this as you go through the other resources in your own space of time, so that whenever you have another opportunity to engage on this particular issues, you are now not taken for granted, where somebody can just come and say, copy and paste, like what Keegan rightly said it, that we might think, oh, now we have something reading very nice, but that perhaps it has just been repackaged, but the ideals and the tenets are still the same. So how do we go about it? So within, as you read the different socioeconomic policies that are at the disposal right now, you also need to identify what are the strengths, where can we strengthen? Like in the RDP houses, it wasn't like as bad as it was, but like Comrade Fundi highlighted, that we don't give enough time and structure to for certain particular policies to implement them. Somebody comes up, like if you see how the change in hands between the NGP and the NDP, it was just a swift process. Before you even test what exactly does this policy work for us, then already it had shifted into another direction. We now have a new one. So we don't even know whether how sincere is those are those who actually come up with this particular policy, whether it's just another way of just delaying progress or development. It's particularly for the young ones, because of course our policies should speak to our everyday lives and challenges when it comes to those three aspects: poverty, unemployment, and inequality. So we need to definitely understand the social compact trajectory historically, so that it could inform the current policies. And let me end by saying, as the young people of today, as the young generation, you are the policymakers in your own right, and certainly need to understand how this process happens. Where are you being duped or misled or whatever? But unless we also get active in whatever we do, like right now, yes, we could be invited for any dialogue, but what is it that is different that we're going to contribute towards those particular conversations, especially for the benefit of the other young ones, or for the benefit of the senior citizens, to say, okay, we can be talking about, we want this kind of a social compact this time around, but this thing has been there before. So what is it that failed from this particular policy, and where can we strengthen it? Then also get excited around issues of research, because I don't know if Africa Monitor is gonna maybe take, maybe have another session or some workshop around research policy to inform, policy development processes. And of course, we have to participate in the consultative processes that are gonna go out or that happen in our different various spaces, so that at least our voices could be heard. Only when we participate actively and not just take things for granted as given, like Keegan rightly summarized it, I guess we can do, we can actually make some kind of improvement as the youth. So thank you very much. I think I don't have much to say. I'm so grateful to Africa Monitor for organizing this session and inviting us to contribute. And Comrade Fundi, thank you so much. I know we are in between workshops, but you also made time to come and be with us. Thank you, and thanks to Keegan for those thought-provoking questions. Thank you. Am I still there?
Yes.
Because I had struggled. I thought perhaps now I'm speaking to myself. At least I'm still around. Okay. Okay, so I hand over to, is it Mira who was actually who is sharing?
Yes, I am, Cherish. Thank you, Dr. Janet. A very interesting discussion, great explanation about the social compact and where we as the youth stand in helping create those policies. I think I'd like to open the floor up to a discussion. Dr. Janet, will you lead the discussion and answer any questions anybody may have? Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear
Yes, we
you.
can.
Yes, we can
Perhaps
hear
they're
you.
trying to digest.
Okay, that's great. So the floor is open up to discussion. Anybody have any other questions for Dr. Janet? Any points they'd like to raise? Please feel free to do so now.
And guys, I just want to acknowledge that since my colleagues have been trying to log in, but they were struggling, I'm with them right now. And I'm with them. I'm with Mr. Papi. I'm with Ms. Yonela Mboniswa. I'm with Rose Ntombeni and Clifton Gaman. Thank you very much.
So if there's no, Mr. Sabelo, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, it's good day now, I think. It's 12 noon. Hello. Am I
Hi.
audible? Okay. No, thanks for the platform leadership. Basically, yeah, I will start to acknowledge African Monitor for creating such a space where, as youth, we can ventilate our frustrations towards Africa as a whole. But in this context, we speak about South Africa. So my mind is more of a comment than a question or clarification. It's a comment around how the processes that we are using currently as a country to develop policies is not inclusive. Number one, some of the policies are not binding, are not law binding. So for me, they're just nice words, nice documents that are there to put a lipstick in the pig, to make our government look like they are doing something to change the situation that we're facing as youth, especially when it comes to inequality, unemployment, and poverty. If we take a step back and look how our African economy was created or was colonized, I'll try to find ways that will say what I mean. So at the moment, our economic structure or our economic history was built on mining and agriculture. In this instance, I'll focus on mining a little bit. So mining is more of a genesis of African economy. That's why most of our countries were colonized, because of the minerals. So we have in South Africa, we have a Mineral Petroleum Resources Development Act, MPRDA in short. That legislation doesn't accommodate anything about community beneficiation or youth empowerment. Let me focus on youth. Doesn't speak anything about youth empowerment. Then they go and open a NYDA to empower youth. When you look at the policies of NYDA, still doesn't speak to what generates economy in South Africa, which is mining. When you look at our education system at the moment, or even during Bantu education and everything, ever since it's been developed, or they keep changing the curriculum every time, but still doesn't speak to how to our economic goals. Doesn't speak to mining again. Doesn't speak to where our economy is heading as a country. So as youth, we are not being empowered to participate in the economy. Yet they are developing policies as national development policy and NDP in RDPs and stuff. Still, they are not binding. We need legislation that is binding, that has a political will to develop us as youth. And also, if there will be a clear policy that speaks to consultation, how do government or private sector consult our communities or consult us as youth to participate in the economy so that we can deal with unemployment, we can deal with inequality. But at the moment, there's no clear policy or clear legislation that mandates everyone to consult us meaningfully so. The language of policies, the language of legislation, even the language of constitution it's too technical for an ordinary young person to understand. Yet in our education system, there's no such thing that speaks around policies. There's no education that talks about policies or something that will teach you the language, something that will empower you to understand when you read the police. What do you mean? Well, you get my point. So even Comrade Kigen put it very nicely. The problem in South Africa is implementation and compliance. There's no compliance of our constitution by the private sector, even the government. So there's no political will to empower youth. Even the same government officials, they lack the capacity to implement some of the policies that they always come about with. Some of them, they don't even understand the same policies. So for me, I think we need to start where it all began, where we empower, where we teach our young people, our youth from the early age. How does the economy function? How did it come about? Where is it going? Then we develop a curriculum that speaks directly to that. We can't have a life orientation as a subject. Whereas every day in our doorstep, our minerals are being chipped out. Then they come back to us. Basically, they are busy breeding consumers through these policies, through the education systems, whereas the real economy still lies with the private sector, where the legislation still protects the private sector. When you go through the MPRDA, you can tell. You can read whatever legislation you want. If you read it closely, you can tell this thing speaks to the private sector. It protects the private sector. Our government is out there to protect the private sector, not out there to protect and promote human rights or to deal with inequality. So for me, Thabo Mbeki came with some policies never implemented. Jacob Zuma came with policies never implemented. Ramaphosa is coming with the 2020 something NTP. Will never even implemented. And when you listen closely to our president when he speaks, it seems like it's the only the president understands what he's talking about. The ministers at the local level, provincial level, anywhere, they don't speak the same language as the president is speaking. They don't even understand what the president is saying. But we are here now discussing what the president is saying. But at the local level where we live on a daily basis, they don't speak the same language. That's my problem in South Africa. There's a conversation at the network. The same conversation is very different at the local level. People are killing each other for positions at the moment at the local level. Let me not be long, leadership. I'll come in again. Thanks to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Sabelo. You make some good points. One of the problems in our country is how policy is applied and created and implemented. And not only implemented, but also how it's not in, I can't get to the words, but you know, how we enforce those policies. That's a big issue in the country. Mr. Tulani, are you ready for your, you can go ahead.
Yes, thank you for the beautiful seminar. My name is Tulani Mkhecha. I'm from Pretoria. I'm from the organization called Friends in Disaster Risk Reduction Africa. Am I audible enough? Hello? So my point that I want to make a comment as a youth is to see that how can we speed up that we get all the SDG goals to be implemented. One other thing that we need to look at it is that the goal number 17 for collaboration in one goal, we must speed up that because we've got only a few years left for us to achieve those goals by 2030. There's one goal that I'm very interested in that I see the crisis coming because my background, I'm coming from the disaster management. I hold a master's degree in disaster management. So as we're coming from COVID-19, which has impacted the world, we foresee top risks which are coming. One of the other risks is climate change. And we are requesting to all people who are concerned in the climate change space to take the study of Emalahleni municipality, which is at Mpumalanga, which is known as one of the extremely dangerous places about air pollution in Africa. I want us to look at the way that how can we implement a solution for that area together, all of us, before all of us will become affected. So that's one thing that it will help us to speed up for us achieving the climate change goals and reducing the impact of climate change, which we might face. Policies are made, policies are good in various sectors, but if we push collaboration, we make sure that all custodians of these policymakers are sitting in the round table and taking accountability to say, we from the legal, from the justice side, we will make sure that all people who are breaking all the policies or all the laws are being prosecuted. Because of currently under environmental management, there are beautiful policies, but you still find people are cutting trees, and the law is not even practiced at any of these sins. So what I'm trying to say, I'm calling for the youth, that the youth is the future for the world. The youth is the future for tomorrow. So let us identify cases that we can see, and let us have a multi-collaboration, a stakeholder partnership to address that issue that we are facing. Currently, I'm requesting that we need to look at the issue of eMalahleni under a climate change goal number 13. We need to address that climate change that's existing. We need to make sure that in addressing this, we also get all the role players to be part of this, addressing this goal. So I don't know whether my input is clear or what.
Thank you, Mr. Delani. In the issue of climate change, I was talking to one of my friends who moved from the States down to South Africa. And I realized there's so much small things we can do in South Africa that we don't implement that could help us combat climate change, such as having bottle banks where you take your old alcohol bottles or glass bottles back and you get a little bit of money back for that. We barely have that. The use of electric cars, yes, we're getting there, but it's so expensive, and with load shedding and all of these other issues, it's become difficult. I'd also like to mention that we'd like 2 minutes per speaker, if that's possible. Mr. Tuto, are you ready?
Sorry.
Yes, Dr. Janet?
Mira, sorry, I'm tempted to respond to Tuto and Sabelo before I leave, because I need to get back to the
no, that's fine. That's fine.
Sorry. Brilliant, excellent interventions, the young ones. Now we can see that the more we continue to have these conversations and also enhancement around these policy issues, I think we can go far. I'm so glad that both of them actually touched on very critical policies that I was also chatting to Comrade Fundi that we need to add this. Otherwise, I'm telling you, if we are to conduct a robust view, it simply means all the aspects that affect various communities as multi-stakeholders to this idea of the SDGs have to be actually maybe to some extent reviewed. And this speaks strongly around the issue of MIDPs, MPRDA, sorry, the mining charter, the social contract that we spoke about that has been in existence during apartheid. Obviously, it was more buffered as underpinned by the mining industry. What is it that has changed? Because we still find private sector is still in control, much of the control of the extraction of our minerals on the on the land. So what is it that has changed? So thank you so much for those highlights, and to Thulan for also reminding us about the disaster management aspects, that we need to also have some kind of review of the policies in place in relation to the climate justice issues. And I guess we can also share with Comrade Joseph and the team at African Monitor the climate national climate change strategy for South Africa, perhaps we can begin now to really become serious about having our input incorporated, write up submissions based on your different areas of expertise. For those who are into mining, Sabelo you could have maybe your own reading group where you could actually now begin to focus on the mining laws in the country. Apparently, me and Comrade Fundi have been involved in that aspect with the mining affected communities, particularly women, young women, and community activists. That is the issues of mining policies and in relation also to the issues of disaster management and climate change. So we could actually share those resources so that at least we have the focused approach to this social compact. Let's exhaust everything and then call for binding. I love the two speakers all spoke about the issue of binding policies and laws. We have all these beautiful laws, including the national constitution itself, but as long as civil society, we don't play our oversight role to ensure that these policies or laws are actually implemented or are they binding in a way, then we might as well forget. It will be just another exercise. So I'm glad that the two contributors, they actually pushed even ourselves as the, resource people today. Ella, we actually all challenged. I'm sure I wouldn't want to get deeper into that, but I guess they've pointed to some critical policies that we all need to talk about when is in relation to the social compact, the mining ones and the climate justice. Thank you so much, Emily. This is such a very fascinating session. I wish I could stay longer, but now I have to go for the other workshop. It's also around conflict resolution and mediation. Yeah, I think there's a policy also related to that, but we'll talk about it next time. Thank you so much.
Can I say something before you go?
Yes, please.
Okay, no, my name is Joseph, and really, I really want to thank you so much. I know you are a busy person I've ever met, but you always make time for young people, and especially issues of development, and you've never said no to African Monitor. So we really appreciate your time, and we have taken into consideration your suggestion. But also I want to ask, because you've noticed, I'm talking to participants, we lost few minutes when we were trying to sort out the technical problem. I want to ask if we can take at least 15 minutes additional so that we can give to, after Tuto has asked question, if we can all really be a little patient and we give maybe 15 minutes to Ms. Fundi to kind of bring in or speak to, or maybe even have a conversation with our young people on some of the key issues, because I know we cannot discuss everything now, and this is one of the many engagements we're going to have. But if we can give her maybe 15 minutes for her maybe to speak on the issue of the climate change, which one of the participants just mentioned, and maybe the gender-based violence, and maybe close on employment, because those are really those biggest challenges facing young people. Hope Amira, you will allow for that time, and I hope participants can be patient. Maybe if we can add 15 minutes to end this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Comrade Joseph. I'll just stand for a few minutes. Yeah.
Hello, I am Tuto. So I want to respond to the question that was asked of what influence would you like the voice of the youth to serve in both the research and the development of new social compact. So basically, today's generation of the youth are struggling to reach social and economic markers for adulthood, such as completing school and becoming financially independent. The barriers for young people transitioning to adulthood are greater than ever before. Yet young people are taking action and finding new ways to challenge the status quo and making accountability demands. There is strong evidence that participation of young people in formal institutional political process is relatively low when compared to the older citizens. This challenges the representation of political challenges and the political systems, and leads to a barrier where young people can't have a say in anything. In order to respond to the needs of young people, our active and meaningful participation in the society and democratic practice and process is of crucial importance. When young people meaningfully engage in decision making, it improves our problem solving, negotiation, and communication skills, which enables us to build better relationships and lead to policies and decisions that are more likely to address our needs. Furthermore, given a conducive environment, we can use these skills to strengthen civil society, increase accountability of government and cooperation, and work towards greater social cohesion. In order to reach the SDGs, the youth will have to play a vital role. Our voice encourages student engagement, foster feelings of self-worth, and build leadership skills that prime young people for civic life. Being considered in decision-making process is very important because it gets it helps when it comes to decision making that you could know the needs that we have, because we know the needs that we have and ones of our peers, and understand how to effectively reach our peers. Through active participation, us young people are empowered to play a vital role in development as well as that of our community, helping them to learn vital life skills, developing knowledge on human rights. So the more we are involved, that's the more we can actually have social cohesion, and it can help us to reach even greater heights. Without the youth being involved in certain things, it has an influence on us being not ready for our adulthood, and it has an influence on us not being ready to get into a space of having to get into a space of having to work out a certain strategy of where we can work with political some political, what can I say, what can I use? Where the political views of everyone can be helped. And as you say, climate change is influencing, as Sabela said, climate change is influencing on what the youth can do. It's very important for us to be involved in decision making, which it involves in local government, provincial government, even in national government, because it is evident that there is less participation from the youth in all those government sectors, and which that ends up creating a gap between the youth and the adulthood. It creates a gap where we can't fill up the gap to make us ready for adulthood, and it makes it difficult for us to actually have an influence on how certain government strategies have been written down, certain government contracts have been written down. So that's what I wanted to get out. So we would like that, please can you get more involved? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tuto. Then we're going to have Ms. Fundi speak again on gender-based violence and on climate change for the next 15 minutes. And then, then I'll hand over to Joseph to say thank you and do the closing. Ms. Fundi, could you please take the floor?
Good morning again. Oh, actually, it's good afternoon now. Can I just ask? I think I'll start with climate change. What do you think that government has done enough in our country around the question of climate change? Do you think government has done enough in our country on the question of climate change? And do you think, what are your expectations in that? That's more what you would like you to sort of come up with a recommendation on what should be done. Do you think government has done enough on climate change? And what are your expectations of government on the question of climate change? Please feel free to come in, you know, because I know that Miss Amira is our facilitator. I can see a hand. Let me pull back. Amira.
Hi, Mr. Tulani, would you like to say something?
Yes, thank you. I would like to say something. You know, South Africa is known with a country that makes beautiful policies. But when we come to implementation, we are lacking. That is why this is a call for the youth to stand up and to fix the crisis that we are facing in our country. So government, they are very good in making policies. For example, in the policies for environmental management, we've got beautiful policies that have fines, but you will go driving in the villages. Okay, you see people are dumping rubbish, and the government is not doing anything. So I feel like now it's time that for all of us, the youth, we stand up and we assist government and we work with government. Don't blame government. We are government at the end of the day. So we know where is the gap. We know where is lacking. So I feel like everyone must bring his expertise or her expertise or her company expertise on resolving this issue that we are facing in the country. We can't be blaming government all the time. Government. We are government. Let's unite and do something. Policies are there already. If these policies need to be reviewed, we can sit down and review. We can sit down and give guideline and direction. We can also establish a forum that will consist of the youth that can advise government according what is the youth feelings, how do they see things happening. Because remember that we are the youth today, tomorrow we are the leaders and we're gonna be the fathers of this country. So we have to find a way that we find the country working in harmony together. There must be a knowledge transfer between the people who are making policies currently now in government and the new people who will be making policies. That means there must be a way of accepting new policy makers and accepting the change and the way of making new policies in this current time, taking note of innovation, taking note of climate change and other factors around that. So government has done enough to make policies, but now we need implementation. So this forum, I see it as a very big forum to call for all the youth to say, let's implement the SDG goals so that we can be in line with the time for 2030. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tulani. You got some great points. We can't just blame the government, but unfortunately, the government is a massive part of the issues that we face here in South Africa. Miss Fundi, are you ready for your 15 minutes of to discuss climate change and gender-based violence?
Okay, I'm trying not to discuss it. I'm trying to hear from the youth on this question. And I just, yeah, because I want the youth to really give us, and I'm still inviting someone if there's any addition on this question on climate change, because obviously the answer that we have is that government has not done enough. They only just develop policy. They did not implement the policy. That is the answer. And then the proposals about what we want to see, youth must be involved in policy. implementation, they must assist government in implementation. There must be a youth forum to advise government on climate change. There must be knowledge transfer between the old guard and the new guard when it comes to policy making. Yeah, and we must definitely, we have to implement. Now, I want to raise a question on gender-based violence, because with GBV, we've got a big challenge that since I think from the beginning of the year up to now, we have been able to bury more than 3,000 women who have been killed. And I think 1,500 of them, it could even be more because of the poor data. But at least 50% of these women were killed by their intimate partners. So do you think government is doing enough on GBV? And what do you want to propose as young people on the question of GBV? Perhaps before we move on to that, let us give Thulani another chance, another bite. Thulani, please come through.
Lena, you had your hand up. If you want to make a comment, please go ahead.
Hello, I'm Lena from Johannesburg. Yes, the burning issue that I really wanted us to talk about was the GBV. In as much as we keep making noise about it, but it keeps happening. So I think as a group, can we come up with maybe different ideas on how we can approach it and bring it to an end? Because every day when you're reading newspapers, you find these cases, they keep going up. Like on Monday, I was reading the newspaper. I read that the percentages keep going up. So what can we do as a youth? Because we talk about it, we say something about it, but I don't think there's a lot of action happening to bring this thing to an end, because it needs to stop. We don't need to bring it down, but we need to bring to an end of this thing. So it's really a concern to me. Like, I really wanted to comment about it. I'm ready to any ideas that we can contribute and come up together with, and then we can see the way forward, because we talk about it, we post about it, everybody's making noise about it, but little action is taken. So what other strategies can we do? What other ways can we go for to solve this thing? That's all I wanted to comment, and thank you.
Can I just make a comment on gender-based violence? So in South Africa, no matter how many policies we put into place, no matter how many educational programs we put into place, what really needs to be taken care of is how it is implemented. I have had friends who have been sexually assaulted, and going to the police station, she was immediately told, "Are you sure you want to go ahead with the case? Because you are going to ruin this young man's life." So it's the way we implement things that needs to change, in my personal opinion. Mr. Thulani, do you have anything to say?
Okay, thank you for the beautiful question about the gender-based violence, which it has been running since we started COVID, and a lot has been said. But I feel like our departure point, it must be a dialogue between man and a woman, because all those, a man need a woman need a man. I see that our government is dividing the nation sometimes, because it doesn't educate, it only point finger to one side. So when we start the dialogue, we get to understand what are the men facing. There are men who are facing an abuse, and we are doing nothing about that. We only focus on the one side. That is why when we speak about the SDG goals, they aim to bring a holistic change to a human being life. Like, a dialogue will make a woman understand how does a man's mind, and a man understand how does a woman's mind, and we bring all these issues forward, and we try to find a solution together as a collective. Because today men are being pointed as evil people, and for balance creation, we need men, we need women. So I think a dialogue has to be initiated, and the youth must speak, must voice out about what do they want to see. The other thing from disaster management point, we must look at the root cause of this gender-based violence. What is the root cause of this gender-based violence? Remember, this gender-based violence, it was escalated during the COVID-19 when we were locked. Everyone was at home, partners were at home. I think they faced problems, the problems escalated more. But we need to look from the root cause. What is the root cause of this gender-based violence? And if it exists, how long will it cripple our society? So we need to come up with a solution to say, like, for example, if you take goal number 3 of good health and well-being, a good health and well-being, it involves eating good, living good, and training together. So if we are healthy, if we are a healthy community, a healthy society, I don't think we will have this problem of gender-based violence because of our people are eating crap food, are not eating healthy food. So that's one of the contributing factors that we should understand. You know. So I'll stop there, not to elaborate further. But what I want to emphasize is that a dialogue must be initiated where the youth are speaking, the men and the women, because of remember that if you want to build the society, you must also promote marriage, that people must have healthy marriage. There must be marriages because of one of the principles of building a nation is to marry for each other's communities. So the root cause of identifying this is important. Health is very important. Food is important. Then we can be able to depart on the issues that we face, mental problem, that why am I abusive? Why am I a perpetrator of this gender-based violence? Then from there, we'll be able to draw some solutions. But food plays a very vital role because of you become what you eat. Your mind is going to be influenced about what you eat. If you eat bad food, you will do bad decision in your life at all times.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Delani. Could we try and keep comments to 2 minutes each? We are unfortunately running out of time. I am going to give Homo Tsehang a chance to speak as she hasn't spoken yet.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. On the part of sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, ma'am.
On the part of the gender-based violence, I would like to say that the South African government has acknowledged high rates of gender-based violence during the South African government has acknowledged high rates of gender-based violence both during and before the pandemic. But the South African experts told Human Rights Watch that despite promises, including in a national strategic plan to address gender-based violence and the femicide, the government has still failed to provide necessary funding for shelters and other services. Efforts should be made to improve access for marginalized people, including sex workers, lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people, and the undocumented survivors. Thank you.
Can I please come in?
Amira? Yes, Linda, please come in.
All right. I just want to comment on what Sabelo said. I think we check out a lot of things and forget our psychological being. Most of whatever we are planning from now, I think we must focus too much on our psychological being because most men are psychologically affected with whatever is going on in terms of economic, financial situations and everything, situations around them, being unemployed and whatnot. So because they are already frustrated with whatever is going on in their life and being providers, it's really affecting them. So whatever strategies that we're gonna come up with here, please, can we concentrate more on how we can sort out our psychological being more than our physical outlook? Thank you.
South Africa still has a major issue regarding social mental health. It's still looked down upon in many communities to go and see therapists, but we have therapy we have access to all of these services that we don't use because we are too embarrassed to do so. Gender-based violence goes way beyond mental issues. It stems very far from patriarchy and a patriarchal society, as well as patriarchal cultures that we unfortunately do still belong in. I'm going to let Sabelo speak. Sabelo, you may. Floor is open to you.
Thanks, Chair. Comrade Tulani says you become what you eat. Very nice. You see, when it comes to GPV, gender-based violence, my take is we sometimes we are using wrong solutions for different problems, or sometimes we have that holistic approach for different issues. Currently, we let's look at our justice system or our legacy, the legacy system of opening up a case, as our previous speakers has alluded. There's a problem. For me, what perpetuates GPV is the social conditioning, our psychological approach to things. How are we conditioned socially? We, as guys or as boys or as men, but for me, a man comes. It's not just a man because of gender, it's more of a responsibility. As we have a tendency of approaching women with that sexual approach. We view our relationships for sexual gains more than anything else. It's a problem. It's a social conditioning that we grew up with from our elderly brothers from school. As I'm saying, the problem is the education system. There's no political will to build a better South African, let alone a black South African, or let alone a black African. There's no political will to build that thing. So there's someone who's benefiting from how things are at this moment in time. There's someone who's benefiting from the high rates of GPV cases. We should shy away. We should stop blaming our economic challenges as men. Good, I'm frustrated because I'm not working. Leadership, material things doesn't contribute towards your character or your psychology. In the country, we have a problem that people draw confidence from material position. If you drive a BMW, it means now you are a man, or your character now is big. That's the social condition that I'm having a problem with in this country. So most generally, I will say the materialism has taken over our characters. If you don't have those material position, people tend to have a low confidence. Then the next person will be a victim because you are frustrated internally, because you don't have confidence, because you don't have a car, you don't have a cell phone, you don't have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Social conditioning, as Comrade is saying, our psychological well-being, we should put it in the forefront. Then we will deal with the GPV problem. As Comrade Tulani was saying, the root cause, in my perspective, the root cause of GPV is social conditioning through materialism. We should stop seeing women as our sexual partners. But if we can push it to a spiritual or more psychological partners, maybe we'll find something better. But as it is, the system that we are using to deal with GPV is wrong. It doesn't solve GPV.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sabelo.
As I was saying, my leader, man, this time is very short, man. We should make him a session that lasts until 6 a.m. One is us know.
I'm going to give it to Pastor Lebo. Pastor Lebo, can you please keep it to 2 minutes?
Okay,
you have the floor.
All right. Thank you very much, colleagues. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes. On the issue of GBV, I've been on the ground on the child youth response on the GBV. And then if I only hear you speaking about men and women, children also, they are mostly affected. And there are measures that still need to be taken and involve even the economic players to support us to bring impact and change. Our role as CSO is needed to be supported in a much wider and deeper way, and to ensure that the economic players has a meaningful engagement with communities on the ground. Treating civil societies as an essential key partner will make the economic recovery process better focused on the people. For thus, we are still lacking. We have lots of economic, we have lots of, we are lacking, we lack resources.
Pastor Lebo, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Amira?
Yes, I can
Hello?
hear Pastor Lebo. I can hear you on my side.
Okay, my dear. We should find sustainable solutions to address gender-based violence in communities by enacting effective policies on economic empowerment and on the vulnerable groups, so that there is a downstream effect in the long run. GBV responders, particularly in the rural areas, should be given adequate resources, funding, so that we are able to effectively respond to victims of violence. And this should be guided by a principle of citizen. Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Yes, this should be guided by a principle of citizen-centeredness, inclusivity, reflective learning, active participation amongst the youth throughout the region, and sustained attitude towards socio-economic transformation and empowerment, and strengthen agency of local communities and amplify grassroots voices. I've been very much deeply involved with child youth on GBV response, and I've seen the errors and the gaps that continue to widen. Even if we talk about men and women, we must never leave a boy child or a girl child behind, because those children, they are mostly affected. Hence, part of the other strategies that we can come up is to build the family dynamics. We must also prioritize on that, and the health mental state, that when we continue on the ground, we've seen that lots of depression and stresses between those children, they are also being affected. So when we come up with other plans relating to GBV, we must not only look on the men and women, we must remember that now child youth, they are also suffering on this regard. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pastor Lebo. Joseph, would you like to do the closing?
Good. No, thank you so much for this wonderful conversation. And I think you all agree with me that time was not on our side. Miss Fundi, I know you wanted more time. Is there one question maybe you still have to ask, and then we close?
Thank you so much, Joseph. I just wanted to perhaps ask just one last question on the employment. In your view, who do you think should be responsible for employment creation? And are there any alternatives, to employment? Are there any alternatives to the question of just being employed when it comes to the whole issue of, livelihoods? Yeah, that is what I wanted to also find out.
Can we hear from people who are with Vusi? You never spoke.
Greetings once again, leaders, and thank you very much for the opportunity to speak and participate in the meeting. I think when it comes to the issue of employment, our country has a long way to go because most of the people are unemployed, and most of the people who are in that employment rate is the youth. And it's not like the youth doesn't have the qualifications or the necessities to be employed, but then based on the circumstances that we find ourselves in, we are not able to be employed. And if I were to come up with a solution, I think people have been saying it now and again that the youth needs to be innovative. We should learn to start our own businesses and be creative. But then the question comes back again to where do we get the funding to start our own businesses and show forth our capabilities as the youth. I would like to step down. Thank you very much.
Good,
Thank you,
good.
Joseph. Thank you, Busi.
Good. Let me really thank you, all of you, for this conversation. And this is just a starting. And we have more conversation, and they will be the first one to know which dates. And some will be physical. So we're going to have one in Gauteng, in the Northern Cape, and probably in KwaZulu-Natal. So our team, Dr. Janet and Ms. Fundi, will be helping us with the provincial conversation. And then after the input from all those provinces and other online conversation we're going to have, we may also have one with women and one with the labor. And then from there, they are going to compile a report which among others, it's going to form the civil society contribution to this conversation of the new social compact. Then the report will be submitted to the presidency and other key partners in development. So I really want to thank you so much. I know we have taken much time than what we initially mentioned, but you remember we had the little crunches with the techniques, but thank you so much for staying on. And please, let's keep the conversation coming. If really there is someone who may not have gotten a time, you can also send us an email, but also on our social media. Let me ask Amira if you can type our social media in the chat group so that we can keep the conversation coming and which hashtag we can use. So then our team will get all those contributions and put them into the report. Once again, we appreciate your time. Our two facilitators, Ms. Fundi, we really appreciate your time and your wisdom, which you are always willing to share with the young people. And then thanks to Dr. Janet as well. Let me also thank our facilitator, Amira. Well done. Together with Emily, you have done a wonderful job in preparing this. And so we keep in touch. Please your contribution keeps on coming. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you very much, African Monitor. Thank you, Amira, for chairing our session and giving us the chance and being understanding. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.